And joining us now is Mahmoud Khalil and his wife, Dr. Noor Abdallah. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having us.
Of course. It's great to see you both.
Thank you so much.
To be able to talk to you both, to have you here together at the same
person?
time.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's begin at the beginning. March 8th, federal agents follow you into the lobby of your building. Do you remember understanding what was happening at that time? And what was it like for you, Noor, to see all of this unfold?
I mean, I don't think, for me at least, I wasn't expecting that to happen that night. We were actually right before, we were at an iftar dinner, and we were talking about how we're going to go home and just relax, watch a movie, drink some tea. So, you know, we were preparing to have a quiet night in. And then the agents came behind us at the apartment door. And then it all kind of unfolded. And you know, I've told the story many times, but it ended with Mahmoud being dragged away from me. I was 8 months pregnant at the time. It was very scary, especially not knowing what was going on, where he was being taken. They wouldn't answer any of my questions. At one point I was running around them, you know, I was chasing them down the street. Like, just answer anything, I just need to know where he's going. And nobody would tell me anything. So that was scary, and I didn't really know anything until the Monday. So he was taken on Saturday. I didn't hear from him until Monday. So that whole weekend, it was just speculating what's going on. Is he okay? They were in plain clothes, so I didn't know if it was ICE agents, if it was somebody else. We didn't really have any information. So, you know, it was scary. I think it was one of the scariest moments of my life.
Understandably.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you didn't expect it to happen that night. Does that imply this had been a worry on your mind prior to that?
Not for me, but I think Mahmoud can kind of talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about that, please?
I mean, basically, I've been sort of targeted by doxing and smear, like false smears, like since the summer. So I sort of like got used to, you know, like that sort of doxing online. However, the 2 weeks or the 10 days prior to March 8th, there was more of a coordinated attack. Like, you would see like at least 5-7 groups, like constantly posting, tweeting about me, mentioning Rubio, Trump, all these people, agencies, like, to deport me. I had some sort of like a worry about, I was certain that I would be at least visited by like a law enforcement agency. But I had that very small faith that there would be some sort of like due diligence, due process. They would, of course, they are seeing the tweets, they would go into their records. Who's Mahmoud Khalil? What did he do? Is what's being said online about him true or not? So, and that's why I was so calm when they approached us. I sort of, you know, I was certain I've never done anything wrong or unlawful. And that sort of like gave me some sort of ease. However, I was so worried about Noor, because the last thing I heard from them threatening Noor that you would be arrested if you don't like leave Mahmoud. That was the last thing I heard from them. And for the next at least 30 hours, they kept me totally in the dark, not allowing me to talk to anyone, not even like listening to the news or calling my lawyers. So I felt that actually something bad happened to Noor until, you know, 2 days after, like Monday morning, when I contacted Noor, and then sort of like that got easier. But that day was one of the most intense days I've went through. And, you know, like in my history, I went through like, you know, the Syrian civil war. I was under bombardment, all of that. But that did not compare to the moment where, you know, you don't know if your wife and son are okay.
You said that there was this kind of period where you were very worried in the lead up to when you were detained. Did you seek at any time any help or raise awareness about the kind of harassing and doxing that was happening to you, either from the university or from any other organizations that could have potentially come to your help in that moment?
Yeah, this was one of the main things that me and other students asked Colombia for. Because doxing did not only start like when Trump was elected or the week of my arrest. It has been happening since like October 2023. And the students reached out to the university seeking legal support, but any other support, because most of those doxers are Columbia students and faculty. So you have your professor doxing you.
Right.
And Columbia did nothing to stop that. They literally did nothing. And this is what sort of emboldened these actors to be more vicious and more violent in their like attacks, with so many comments like, you know, Islamophobic, xenophobic, like, and you name it. But Colombia failed to protect. Even the morning of, I believe, the morning of my arrest, I was so worried. And 6 in the morning, I emailed the president of Colombia and dean of students, asking for resources. Because what I simply wanted is for them to link me with legal support so I can send a cease and desist, sort of like letters to these individuals who are basically defaming me with all kind of false smears.
Did you get a response?
No. Until this moment, no.
You spent 104 days inside a notorious detention facility more than 1,000 miles away in Louisiana. What was that like for you on the inside? And what was it like for you so far away?
The moment you enter these facilities, or not even that, the moment that ICE apprehend you, you don't have any rights. You're expected to follow orders, not to know anything, and when they tell you to sign papers that you should sign. Otherwise, they would leave you in a room for a couple of hours, and then like they would come and ask you like to sign these papers. Inside the detention, the situation was sort of like dire in terms of like I shared a dorm with at least 70 other men. Very difficult stories. You would hear like just heart-wrenching stories about individuals who have been in this country undocumented, but that's their only offense. Like they didn't do anything wrong. Some of them were picked up from their court hearings, from their ICE check-ins. And that's to a lot of people is just like so confusing, because they said like, we were in the process of getting documentation, why we are being thrown here. And once again, no matter what the conditions are in such facilities, it's not necessary. Like even if you had the best conditions, I'm being separated from my family. There was one individual literally attended his father's funeral on the phone. And he had to request like from 70 people to be silent for at least 20 minutes so he can attend the service.
It sounds a bit like you were more worried about some of them than you were about yourself in the moment.
No, I was very worried about myself and about like Noor. But it's just at that point, because I know I didn't do anything wrong, I knew that eventually I will prevail. I wasn't accused of any crimes. And even in the words of Rubio and this administration, they said like my activities were legal. So I was certain it's just like a matter of time. And I knew we had, thankfully, a very good support system, like from the community around us. But a lot of these individuals are forgotten, literally forgotten. That there's people who spent months, more than a year, without any sort of communication from ICE or lawyers. They were just waiting for their fate, thinking that ICE may care about them.
Noor, you mentioned you were 8 months pregnant at the start of all of this. What was it like going through? I mean, I know firsthand how stressful pregnancy is in the best of circumstances. What was it like going through all of this on your own without your husband, the father of your child?
So was a fear of mine from the beginning of our pregnancy, actually, and we discussed it so many times. I was so worried he was going to miss the birth. Whether it was, I was supposed to give birth in Michigan, actually. That was the plan, to be around my family. Mahmoud was about to start a new job. So we decided that I'm not going to go to Michigan because I want to stay close to him. I didn't even want to be an hour plane ride away from him. I didn't want him to miss anything. So we had discussed it a lot before he was taken. You know, after he got detained, it was kind of like a race against the clock for me, at least. We had a very limited time, and I needed him to be back home. So it was a fight every single day, hoping that I'm going to hear something, hoping, you know, they're going to let him out either on bail or whatever it is. Obviously, that didn't happen. But that was, for the beginning of his detention, that was kind of my main focus, is I want him to be out. I want him to be there for the birth of our child. You know, when it happened, I think I had gotten to a point where I kind of accepted it. This was a week before I actually gave birth, a week early. So I think I got to a point where I was like, he's most likely not going to be home. I started to accept that. It was still hard, even after I got to the hospital. I still had like a sliver of hope that, you know, he's going to be here. They're going to let him out on furlough, which they ended up denying after an hour. So, you know, it was difficult, but I think it did teach me a lot about myself. You know, that was something I never wanted to go through by myself, but I made it, and you know, I survived that. It was hard, but yeah.
When you walked through the door with baby Dean by yourself, what was that like?
Yeah. That was harder than the whole process before, the hospital and the labor. That was the hardest moment for me, the most emotional I got. My mom and my sister were with me at the time. They dropped me off and they were getting things from the car. I was obviously postpartum. They don't want me carrying things. So I walked upstairs with Dean by myself. We walked into the apartment, and it was like quiet. And it's not how I imagined walking into my apartment with my new baby. I don't know. I think all the emotions kind of hit me at that point. I just wanted him to be there. And
What was the feeling for you the first time you heard your son's voice, or maybe saw a picture? I don't know if you were able to FaceTime from prison, but what was the first interaction that you had? I mean, I know as a father, the first time you hold your son, it is a life-changing and a profound moment. But you had to do it from distance and not physically touching him.
I mean, I would start by, you know, nothing could have prepared me for that moment. And I'm now dealing with the fact that, you know, I lost like one of the divine moments with my wife and son. I mean, the first time was literally like 3:30 a.m. Moments after like the delivery. I just heard him crying, and that literally like got me in the heart. And I think it's just unbelievable that someone had the cruelty to take that moment from me. And I mean, all these were different. I was able to see him the day after. There's some sort of like a FaceTime app. Like it's so different, but there's some sort of service that I could see Dean. But it was very different from when the first time that I actually held him.
What did you say to him the first time you held him? You don't have to answer that. You know what I'm saying?
To be honest, I don't remember because I was just stunned, and because also we had only 1 hour at that time
Together.
So
let me ask you this: what was the first homemade meal that you had when you guys were all together and alone as a family?
مجدرة.
Good choice. Great choice. Very traditional Palestinian Syrian dish.
Exactly.
Rice, lentils. Right.
Yeah, very simple.
But I bet it tasted great.
Absolutely, like Noor made it. So.
What is it like trying to live a normal life now that you've become a symbol? And I know you have described yourself as a homebody in the past. You didn't ask for this. What's it like trying to rebuild a life under these conditions and knowing that the legal fight isn't over?
Yeah, I don't think we've gotten to the point yet where things have calmed down enough to be able to say how we're trying to assimilate back into our normal lives. It's just been go, 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 go. Which I know it's going to die down, and then we're going to be able to do that. You know, we were taking a walk yesterday, and about 10 people recognized him. People wanted to take pictures with him, and like you said, I am a homebody. I like my space and I like my privacy. And
do you feel safe?
That's a hard question. I don't like going on walks anymore because I'm worried. You know, so far it's been really good interactions, but I'm worried about that bad one. You know, there's a lot of support, and we've had incredible support from all over the world, but there's also been the bad side of it. I worry for Mahmoud's safety. I worry for Dean's safety.
Mahmoud, you're already back out protesting, right? And now you know how much is at stake. You have a young son. You've seen what the state can do to you. How did you decide to come to that decision? Was this something you discussed together about whether you wanted to continue having some sort of public role in this fight?
I don't think there's a choice where your people are being slaughtered by the day, that you would remain silent or not. It's very uncomfortable. It's very risky. But also the moral price I would pay if I remain silent, I believe it's much higher. That's why I don't consider that now, well, like I'm out, let me go about my life. Because unfortunately my life is rooted in fighting this injustice. And I can't imagine myself just remaining silent while bombs are being thrown on the heads of my people.
I think people also ask that question a lot, and I you know, how do you feel? Or did you guys have that discussion? And, you know, just to amplify what Mahmoud is saying, I don't think it's a discussion that needs to be had. I think, you know, it's his moral compass, and it's a fight that we have to fight, and it's something that's very important, and everybody should be going out there and protesting and against this genocide.
Do you see yourselves as connected to some of the broader things happening in immigration in this country right now? I mean, birthright citizenship, a decision this week that puts it in peril. We've seen aggressive immigration enforcement actions all across the U.S. What happened to you is happening to moms and dads all over the country, probably as we speak right now. How do you see those things as connected to what you've gone through?
I believe the system of tyranny and suppression is connected. In my case, they used the immigration system to suppress freedom of speech, and this shed some light on how weak the immigrants and refugees are in this country, that there are some loopholes that the administration is using not to enforce immigration. It doesn't have anything to do with enforcing immigration. It's actually to enforce an authoritarian agenda in this country. And you know, it started, and this is one of the things in my first letters I highlighted, that whether you are a visa holder, a green card holder, or a citizen, they are coming after you. They started with a visa is a privilege, green card is a privilege, birthright is a privilege, federal funding is a privilege, and it would go women's rights is a privilege, LGBTQ rights are a privilege, to make you feel that, well, like, oh, thank you for giving us our rights. But it shouldn't be the case, and that's why this is not only about me, about us, or about like one specific part of the society. It's about every single one on this land.
Mahmoud, we're almost out of time, but I just want to ask you finally, I mean, given this experience that you've gone through and the journey that's still ahead, do you have any regrets or anything that you would have done differently, or have you at all soured about your American experience here? I mean, you are, as you said, a green card holder. Do you want to become an American citizen still?
Absolutely, and I absolutely don't have any regrets in opposing a genocide, which should be once again celebrated rather than punished. And this is why I'm fighting. I'm fighting so that I can raise my children in America, in a country that I chose to be part of. And you've heard all these, like, you are anti-American, or the un-American values, but like protesting is the very American thing you would do in this country, and this is why I would continue to fight so that everyone lives in equality and dignity and prosperity.
Mahmoud Khalil, Dr. Noor Abdallah, thank you to the both of you. It's great to see you in person. Happy to have you here, and look forward to having many more conversations with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so
Thank
much.
you.